Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name is John. Tonight, my guest is Rex Finfeld, and he had an NDE back in 2011, falling from a tree, hitting concrete 26 feet down and headfirst. Incredible. Welcome to the show, Rex. Thank you for being
Hey, thank
here.
you very much. Great to be here. Wonderful to meet you.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you as well. I'm just going to give you the floor, and you can open it up however you want. How about that?
Sure. Perhaps I'll just kind of start with what happened.
Sounds
I
good.
literally was climbing a tree, and it's kind of funny because one of the first things people always ask me, rather than about the near-death experience, is what the heck was a grown man doing up in a tree? I'll get to that in a moment. um, but and it's listed in my records. Everything I'm saying. It's actually in my records that I fell 26 feet. I had a couple of branches that broke underneath me, and I went down like to 26 feet, and I hit concrete head first. Um, and I was basically in a coma for 5 days. I broke 20 bones, and I was very fortunate to survive for a couple of reasons. First of all, the day that I fell, I was in a park when it happened. I'm a martial artist, and I've been training most of my adult life. I also do some instruction. But anyways, I had a training session that morning, and it was a Sunday morning, and decided to go for a run in the park near the place where I was living at the time. And there's a tree I used to climb pretty regularly. I live in Colorado, and I'm in Denver, so there's mountains around me. And one of the things I've always done is just I loved climbing. So it wasn't just trees. I've climbed some mountains. I definitely climbed my share of rocks, and back in those days, as a martial artist, one of my ways of cross training was just climbing. And being in the city, trees are accessible, and it was just certain places I would go, and I had certain trees that I just like to climb. So great exercise and great way to get strong without necessarily getting big. Getting big. I like kind of having more of a leaner kind of a look, especially again being a martial artist. But had a long training session that morning. Normally, I would go home and just crash and relax after such an intense training session, but I had a lot of energy this particular day and decided to go on a nice run, and went by one of my favorite trees and decided to go for a climb. Tree that I've climbed dozens upon dozens of times before. A couple of branches broke on. I was having fun, enjoying myself, and a couple of branches broke underneath me, and I was trying to. What happened? One branch broke. These are live green branches. It wasn't like this tree was dead. It was a completely live green tree. The branches that broke, if you would have looked at the tree beforehand, you would never have thought it wouldn't hold a person's body weight. These are thick green branches. One branch broke, and I reached out to grab another branch to keep from falling. It broke. And somehow I maneuvered. I went down in such a way that I hit the concrete head first. I didn't go, from what I can gather, I didn't go straight down on my head. It would appear that I hit at an angle, because all the bones that I broke were on the left side of my body. So I think I hit at an angle and then slammed down on the left side of my body. In those 20 broken bones, 8 of those are my ribs, and I had massive internal bleeding as a result. Punctured lungs a whole bit. It had just happened to be a couple of girls. I think they're high school age girls that were walking through the park on this day. It was a chilly day, really cool day. There was hardly anybody. When I went on my run, it was about a 3-mile run. I think I saw maybe 2 people on my run. So that's how few people were in the park that day. So this was also amazing that these girls just happened to be walking through the park, and they weren't even anywhere near me. They just happened to see me climbing and were watching me when I went down. And they were the ones that called the authorities. And because of my internal bleeding, I would have died on the path. I don't know how long I would have lasted, but I wouldn't have lasted probably very long had they not been there to call the authorities right away, get the first responders there. Needless to say, I got taken to the hospital, and I have a little bit of a spotty memory of this, but I was surprisingly not unconscious. I was actually conscious when the first responders arrived, and I do have some recollection of that. I just remember being very just wanting to go home. That's all I felt to myself. I knew I fell, but I just wanted to go home. I didn't have any idea the extent of my injuries. I was definitely messed up, and there was no way I was going to get up and walk anywhere. I was, like I said, I broke 20 bones. One of the bones was in my leg. So somewhere, because they get me to the ambulance, somewhere on the ambulance ride on the way to the hospital, I went into deep shock and lapsed into a coma. This was not an induced coma. I literally lapsed into the coma on the way to the hospital, and I was in a coma for 5 days. And somewhere in those 5 days, sometimes people ask me about the near-death experience. I had something really profound happen. The interesting thing is, though, yes, I was under for 5 days, and during those 5 days, I crashed multiple times. So they had to, they had to bring the trauma team into my room, whatever, and basically revive me. And apparently that happened. I don't know how many times, but apparently that happened a bunch of times over the first couple of days. It's my understanding, based on the records and talking to my doctors, that the first night that I was brought in there, I had contracted pneumonia. Apparently, anything that could go wrong went wrong. The doctors did not expect me to even survive the night, let alone survive at all. And then the belief was, after a few days, and it looked like at least my body was going to survive because I had such massive bleeding on the brain. The belief at that point was, okay, well, if he does survive, chances are he's going to come out of this as a vegetable, assuming he ever wakes up. Because before I woke up, they had no idea. Was it going to be a few days, or was it going to be months, or would I maybe never wake up? Because, like I said, I had massive bleeding on the brain going on, a lot of pressure on the brain. They even had to drill a hole in my head. I got a little scar, a little divot right here on my head where they drilled a hole in my head. I understand, partly to relieve pressure, but also for scanning purposes, which if you're a doctor or in a medical field, you'll probably understand what that's about. So needless to say that even when my brother finally came to I was a John Doe when they first brought in. I didn't have my ID or anything on me. So when they finally discovered who I was and my brother, was informed, they told him that, hey, even if he wakes up, given the damage here, what's going on, chances are he's going to end up a vegetable, or just severely handicapped. And thankfully, I didn't end up as a vegetable. I definitely have some issues. There are certain things about my brain that definitely don't work as well as it used to by any means. I did incur some very serious and very real brain damage. But somewhere in all those crashes, and I can't say where, I mean, as far as I can tell, my heart, perhaps only stopped just a few seconds at a time. It wasn't necessarily like I was, some NDEs, you hear they were gone for 10 minutes, or they're gone for an hour, or a couple of rare cases you hear about multiple hours that they were literally dead. I didn't, my body didn't go that way. But again, so this is the part that's kind of nebulous to me, because I didn't feel like I had like multiple experiences. What I had was a very profound moment, and in that moment, it didn't, it's an interesting thing to say it like this, because it felt like a moment, but in that moment was all of eternity, was all of everything. I was, in that moment, the source. I was soul. I did not even have a sense of my body. People talk about leaving their bodies, and I've as an NDE, of course, I follow many NDEs. I've heard many stories. I have a lot of friends that are NDEs, and I think it's so incredible, and I love to listen to these stories. Some people say, did you experience angels? Did you experience your loved ones when you passed? And it's like, the answer is yes, I did, but not maybe in the context that you maybe hear a lot of NDEs describe it. Because in that moment, I literally was experiencing every single possibility and probability all at once. I like to describe it like this. For this period of this NDE, I was all of space and all of time all at once. I was multiple realities and parallel universes. I was every possibility, every probability all at once. I was infinite dimensions all at once. And at the source of this, and this is the most profound part of it, this is the one thing I hear from almost every single NDE out there, I was love. But I describe it as I wasn't feeling love. I was not experiencing love. I was love. And in terms of the life, the spirit, I did not feel as though I was alive. I felt as though I was life itself. I was a source of life itself. I was not a thought. I was not experiencing thoughts. It didn't work like that. I literally was the mind, the thought, the imagination. It gives rise to creation itself. For a moment, that's what I was. And the thing is, coming back, that part of me is still wide open. I'm still feeling that and experiencing that every moment of my life. And in some ways, it's truly beautiful, and I wouldn't have it any other way now that I'm here. But at the same time, coming back to the kind of, to this world, and life as life can sometimes be, the ups and downs, the heartbreaks, the happiness, all the things that can happen in life. Everything just hits me so much harder now. And of course, my NDE happened on April 10th of 2011. I sometimes joke that I'm actually 12 years old, because I'm only 12 years old in this whole entirely new paradigm of reality. And it is. Everything shifted, everything changed. I'm still me. I still have my memories of the past. I thankfully that's all still intact. It took a while to all come back. When I woke up, I was not okay when I woke up. It took a while for everything to come back online, as it were. But at the same time, literally, my sensitivities are just exponentially so much more intense now. My empathy is off the hook now. My thought patterns have changed. Even the way my brain works has changed. The way food tastes has changed. Part of it, and it's interesting, I eat a lot of food now that I did not eat before. Because I couldn't stand the taste of certain foods. Like, I'll just give you one example, like spinach. I thought spinach was just gross before. I'm eating potatoes, guys, straight up. I rarely ate fruits and vegetables. Now I eat a little. I still eat meat, but I eat a lot less meat. But I eat lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, and I have to have spinach every single day. I also never drank tea in my life, and I got to drink tea every single day. Just a couple of examples of just even on a physical level of what's changed. This experience that I had, it's brought a lot of things out, and I seem like, and again, it's given the world we live in, it's in a lot of ways it's made it so much tougher, because all I want to see is peace with everything. Peace in my life, peace with the people that I know, peace in the world, and I can't just shut off that I feel the tensions of the world, nature of existence, nature of consciousness, God, goddess, and then just in all the visions that have emerged and have come from it. As a result, I've taken an interest in quantum theory and cosmology, and I'm certainly no scientist, and I'm not a physicist, but yet that stuff makes a lot of sense to me. It sounds funny to say that, because a lot of times you'll hear those scientists say, well, if that really you think you understand it, then you really don't understand it. And I know why they say that. But the interesting thing is, I'm actually more comfortable exploring the abstract than I am exploring the physical realm, being here sometimes. And in some strange ways, a lot of that abstraction somehow makes sense to me, and I even find a certain comfort in it. And I've even developed ideas and these, I can't call them theories, not being a scientist, but I have these ideas about what dark energy really is, about what gravity's relationship is to a perspective multiverse and to the unified field. So I have, again, all these visions that have been coming to me. I didn't have this before. I'm not saying I was a dumb person. I'm not saying I couldn't hold a conversation about some of these areas of science, because I've always liked science, and I've always kind of kept up on things, but I've never had this before. And I don't even know what to do with it half the time, because I'm not a scientist. I'm just a guy that hit his head really hard. It's difficult to get somebody who is a scientist to want to listen to me.
It's all there. All the information is there. I guess it's like a matter of properly accessing and
interpreting it. It's like interpreting it, and then how do I explain it?
Yeah.
I've made videos on it. I have videos that are out about this sort of thing. Even my ideas about gravity and its relationship to, like I say, dark energy.
We should mention your book as well. Let's mention your book since we're here.
Yeah, and the thing is, when I wrote the book, when I finished the book, I didn't have these visions. Some of these visions came a little bit after the near-death experience. Like I said, when I had the NDE, when I came back, it didn't shut off. It wasn't like I went there and came back.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like something just opened up and it stayed opened.
Right.
The proverbial veil got lifted and it never came back.
That's quite common. I mean, I hear this a lot amongst NDEers and even those who have had other spiritually transformative kind of experiences, where it's something opens up and just never closes, and it becomes a part of them, and it becomes a matter of how long, a matter of I guess developing how to access and what to access it for.
It is. It is. And also, too, is getting that human ego part of it to kind of catch up to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that took a long time for that to happen for me, too. That human part of me, I couldn't somehow wrap my mind around a lot of the stuff for years. I'm there now. That part of me is even excited about it now. But for a while, my ego was definitely getting in the way, because that part of me just couldn't seem to quite wrap, that part of my ego mind could not just wrap itself around all this new information, all these new visions, and partly too, why me? Why am I the person that has all this stuff? How, there's so many other people in the world. Why me? And then, of course, I heard a great comment about that, of the woman who's becoming a Muslim. I don't know what the right word is. Kind of the equivalent of like I guess a preacher. I can't think of the right word. But anyway, she was learning to, to become something, a representative in the Muslim community. And she's like, when I got this calling, it's like, especially being a woman in that community doing what she was doing, she's like, well, why me? This is such a major undertaking. Why me? But then she goes, why not me? And I heard this and I'm like, oh my gosh, why not me? Fine. Okay. I don't feel like I did. I don't know. Is it a deserving thing, or maybe I don't see myself as somebody who should be talking about this stuff because I'm not educated in this way. I'm not trained in this way, but yet I still have this information. So why not me? Okay. Why me? Okay, great. Well, why not me? So hopefully there'll become a point in time that I can meet the right, groups of people that will go, hey, I will explore your ideas. Again, one of my dreams, yes, I want to work with spiritualists, obviously. That goes without saying, because I'm a deeply spiritual person as a result of this NDE, but also I would love to work with some scientists, some physicists, and get these ideas, working in the realm of physics, have this my video language that I've developed to explain all of this. I mean, can we bridge that gap between my video language and the language of physics? And how might that look? Because I think the stuff fits.
And your book is called My Experiment with Gravity, right?
It is.
So we'll put a link
But
to
that's
that in
more,
the description.
it's ironic because that's more a testament to having fallen out of the tree. And there was a long running joke, and I've always tried to make some light of this, some humor of this. For one thing, I've never called it an accident, even though I mean, certainly can call it that. It's accurate. But I never have used that term. And just saying that I fell, considering how profound it all was, and nearly losing my life with the whole bit, that just seems so anticlimactic. So the long running joke with me, my friends and family was like, hey, Rex, how you been since your experiment with gravity? How did that experiment treat you, Rex? How you been doing? Yeah, the old experiment with gravity. Let me tell you, gravity works great. So, the book being, basically a spiritual autobiography inspired by a near-death experience, I thought the title appropriately should be My Experiment with Gravity. So that's where the title actually came from.
You basically had a massive awakening by force.
Yes. I've always been thick-headed, and it seems to me that the only way source, God, spirit, however you want to put that, could get through to me was to have something like this happen.
Yeah.
I look back over my life and I can see certain parts of my life where I was really being called.
Mm-hmm.
I could see, things were just kind of becoming more and more intense. That is like it literally took something like this for me. Because again, we touched upon this before we started the interview, but as we both agree, you don't have to have a near-death experience to have access to this information because it's already within you, within all of us. It's a part of everything that is.
Yeah. Definitely.
This means to me.
Rex, where were you spiritually before all this happened, before 2011? Did you grow up with a particular religion or anything?
I didn't. My mother, my parents were divorced when I was young. My mother basically raised my brother and I for the most part. I think I was about 11 when my dad left. Long story there. But anyways, my mom considered herself an Episcopal. She wasn't seriously religious, but she thought of herself, because she was raised Episcopalian. So she kind of thought of herself as, that was kind of her background. But she never forced anything religious on me or my brother. She let us find our own way and discover for ourselves our own belief system, if you will. But my mom, being open the way she was, she also believed in things like astrology and other, kind of cult philosophies and practices. For my 18th birthday, one of the coolest things I've ever experienced was my mother, set me up to have a natal reading done from a wonderful astrologer. From back in the time, was also good friends with my mom. And even though I was at the time, just my mindset was, I'm open to this. I'm fascinated by this. I can't say that I really believe in it or not, but I will honestly say it was a really, really amazing experience. My spirituality was kind of like, I'm open to it. Like a lot of people, I just wasn't sure. I could see, the reason why somebody would believe in God. I could see why, that there's a lot of, to me, evidence, at least regarding the experience, and this is getting outside of, say, science and whatnot, because I was definitely very into, what science had to say. And I got, like a lot of people, kind of caught up in, if you can't prove it, it can't really be real. And if it's not something you can touch, feel, or whatever with one of the five senses, then, there's something missing about it. But at the same time, I could not deny, as a human being, as a person, as a conscious being, that, something tells me that there is something more to this. And I can't discount, that there isn't a possibility that there is a greater being and a greater, source to everything that's going on. But to say that I embraced it, I wasn't quite there, at that point. And even as I got to the point of my near-death experience, I had become, I'd say, more evolved in that regard. But at the same time, there was still a hesitancy, I guess you could say, and of course, since a near-death experience, all that's been removed, you know. And part of it too is I carried a lot of guilt and a lot of shame from things that I'd done in my past, before my NDE that I think also really held me back. And the NDE also helped me to learn not just to forgive others, but also to forgive myself. So in a way, I kind of gave myself a clean slate to build my new self and try to build this new life as a result of it.
So I find the wonders of it all because, growing up, I've never been scientific, but I've had sort of ups and downs once in a while where I would be sort of along the same mindset of, if I don't see it, is it real? Is it, I would have my
Right.
doubts. And that's what I find it. I don't know if irony is the right word here, but fast forward years later and what we know now, it's just interesting because it is right in front of us, like, and it's so obvious now, like I see
I know,
God
right?
everywhere,
And that's what I feel like. It's like, wow, I can't believe
yeah.
it's like right there all along, and it is
It's
so obvious.
it's crazy, and it's not in like woo woo kind of ways. It's just it's almost hard to explain, but it's so simple at the same time, right? Because it's just everything and everywhere, and everything is it's proof everywhere that God is real, Or if you want to
It is, and
call
it's
it
like
whatever you want to call it. I mean, everybody has, some people have issues with saying God or source or spirit,
well,
whatever you
it's
want to
interesting. No,
call
that's
it.
true. It's interesting to say that because I've some of my best conversations have been with people that claim to be atheists. And yet, when if I just leave the word God out of the conversation, they're very open to what I'm saying. And it even resonates for some of them. Like, wow, you put it like that. I can go there with you. I can explore that. I can be open to that. So it's interesting that, and this, regardless of what anybody may say and words they may choose to use, I think it's still a part of just about everybody. I mean, the one thing that's a part of just about all of our lives is love. The one thing that everyone shares, regardless of what their belief system is or isn't, is that love is, we have a relationship with love of some kind typically. And one thing about you were just saying a moment ago too, um, a quote that has become probably my single, if I had to pick one quote that is my favorite quote of all time right now, would be the Edgar Allan quote, is that all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. It's all real. And it's all different layers of that same dream, the same reality.
Yeah,
I even have come to accept that the dreams we dream when sleeping are just as real. The meaning is different, and the experience of it is maybe different, but it's no less real than this conversation we're having right now.
that's right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I have a favorite quote too, and it's very similar, kind of on in the same realm, if you will, of what you mentioned. And it's a Lao Tzu quote, ancient
Oh,
philosopher, and it's I believe, and it might
yep, I
not
know
be
who that is.
exactly like this, but it might be something like this: 99.9% of what we say and think is about ourselves, and there isn't any.
No, I mean it's true. I mean the
Yeah,
thing is, there is, I mean, reality, and this is interesting. Michio Kaku, and I think it was that was he's a theoretical physicist, a well-known scientist. Pretty sure it was him that made this comment. But that reality is completely subjective. And to kind of expand upon that a little bit, if you think about it, it is 100% subjective because there is no one singular reality upon which all other realities are compared. There's not a control group reality that the rest of us are being compared to because it is 100% subjective.
mhm,
Even in science, scientists exploring scientific facts have different interpretations of those facts.
yeah.
You can have experts that have equal amounts of experience, similar amounts of years invested into their fields of study, still interpret the facts
Well, it's like we
in
have
unique
so
ways.
many things invested in what we consider to be ourselves in our life. And I'm not saying that it's not us and ourselves in our life, but at the end of the day, the reality, so to speak, is that everything that we do consider ourselves to be, or let's say 99.9% of it, is all based on exterior stimuli, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's what we are technically is what we perceive and what we've had thrown on us growing up, right?
Right.
In this world. This is
Sure,
the way it
sure, that's
works, and
true.
that's fine. Peel the onion and peel off all the all that stuff, and then what? We're still something, right? We're still someone. When you're trying to explain consciousness to a child,
Right.
we're still someone, and is that who we really are, or
One of the messages that I've had, the recurring message that I've had ever since, is give in, let go, make peace with everything. And everything means everything, not just everything light, but everything. The light, the dark, everything in between. Make peace with everything.
since the experience, how do you perceive death? How would you maybe, you know, express this to somebody who has a fear of death? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I was again, I was always open to the possibilities. Prior to the NDE, I certainly was open to the possibilities. And when somebody I loved died, I always had a feeling like they were going home, going to heaven. I had a feeling there was something more. I mean, and as somebody who's always been at least some level of sensitive, I've had experiences, especially like when my mom died. I had an experience with her after she died, and I've always felt like she was always been with me. So because of that, I was always kept an open mind to the idea that there is some form of afterlife, that there is maybe a heaven, a going home, or whatever you want to call that. They think, in certain forms of Buddhism, it's called the Great Liberation. So I kind of had looked into some of that stuff. So I at least was open to it. And because I could feel my mom and feel certain those that had passed and certain experiences, I was open. And I, again, just my human part of me, the ego part of me was always a little bit hesitant at the same time. But since the NDE, all this has been cleared away. And while obviously what we go through, as beings, again with our even with our pets, our dogs and cats, and or anything that passes, yes, the process of death and dying, to watch somebody go through it, especially if they're dying of something like cancer or AIDS or something that's just horrific like that, that puts somebody through such torment in the process of the body breaking down, leading towards the actual process of passing over. I get it can be ugly, it's gruesome, and there's nothing pretty about seeing a dead body. If somebody who's even been to an open casket funeral, it's not. I mean, even when it's nicely done, it's just there's just something about it. It's sometimes tough to take to see that. And if you've ever seen, say, like a really bad car accident, and which I have, and I've seen other things too, where seeing the gruesome side of that ugly side of death. I understand why people fear it so much. I get it. I mean, it just it looks horrible, and unless somebody is fortunate enough to go to sleep and die in their sleep and have that peaceful passing in their sleep, which some people certainly do, it can be a horrible, a torturous process. But I will say, having said that, the actual process of death itself is actually something that is quite beautiful and is something that should be celebrated. I appreciate there's certain cultures around the world that when somebody dies, I mean, you see it like in New Orleans. I understand like the Irish have what's called the Irish wake. When the whole idea is, and I remember even before my mom died, she said this. That, if people need to cry, cry at the funeral, cry at the service. But then when the wake happens, I want you to celebrate. I want you to be happy. I want you to enjoy yourself and celebrate the life. And just know that whatever's happened to the person who's died, no matter how they died, whether it was cancer or whatever it was, or they died in their sleep, that just know something beautiful and profound is happening to that individual. And yes, they are coming home. And that which one thing I've learned from this NDE is that we are all created of the light. We are all created of the source. We are all created of love. No matter what the soul journey may entail, no matter how dark it may get for some souls, all such souls find their way back to light at some point. And that may be hard to believe because there's some really, really dark stuff going on in the world. There's some really dark and very twisted individuals in this world. And that may be very hard to fathom that. But all of us are going to find our way home to light. So if you have somebody that is a loving, beautiful soul, that's your parent, your significant other, that favorite dog or cat or horse or what have you, just know that when they pass, that spirit is coming home. And if you feel that they're with you, it's because they really are. To me, death, and if I may borrow from science once again, the first law of thermodynamics, I won't quote the entire law, but part of that law states that energy is always changing states. Conscious energy is also always changing states. So literally, as we die from this life, moving on to the next existence, it is consciousness changing states. Consciousness is forever. Love is forever. This we always go on. And the beautiful thing about someone who's passed, who's in that space of spirit, the space of home, if you will. There's a lot of things to that, which we can get into maybe another time. But just understand they can exist in multiple places at the same time. They're not relegated to an arrow of time any longer. So meaning it's not like you're taking away from them just because you're talking, say maybe you've got that parent, like in my case, my mom. If I want to reach out to my mom in a spirit space, as say my brother wants to reach out to her, or other people are reaching out to her, or maybe she's fulfilling other roles in this space, she can do it all simultaneously because she's not living on that same arrow of time that we are. She doesn't have to live one moment to one moment to one moment any longer. She is all things at all times, all at once, as she so chooses in that space, as we all will be, can be, well, even are in our human form. But once we pass and we're liberated from this human body, which it's a liberation. I get why the Buddhists call it that, the great liberation. We become liberated from this body, this whole experience and existence. We are soul, we are being, we are as God, if you will, and are immersed in that love. So if you're feeling that individual, you want to reach out, pray to that individual, and you're feeling the light with you at that moment, believe me, they are with you. If you want to speak to them, speak to them. And if you get really quiet and just let yourself really open up and just be in those softest, most sensitive spaces of your being, you might just hear them too.
Well said. Well said. I totally agree with that. Appreciate that you shared your experience and your knowledge with us on the channel. And many blessings to you. Thank you so much, Rex, for everything.
Oh, thank you. Hey, and much love to you and anybody listening. Hey, much love. I wish you all the best. Seriously, whatever you're going through, I hope you make it. I hope you find your way. And seriously, I wish you the best. Lots of love.
Much appreciated. Right back at you. All right. Well, that was great, man. Let me